So our new idea for a film was 007 Refuse and Resist. So upon thinking of an idea for a new Bond film, we wanted to put him in a position that he's never been in before. And that being completely vulnerable for most or even the entire film. So in a regular Bond movie, we usually see him in a couple stages of vulnerability, but it's not that long, and he quickly overthrows the villain or gets out of his position. So our movie is set to take place in a modern America, and it's one where James Bond is the underdog for most of the film, being inside a prison, unable to contact the MI6 without his gadgets. And obviously he has to inform the outside world of what's going on, and somehow manages to do so. So our movie is set to take place in modern America, and we decided to go with America simply due to the fact of what's going on in mainstream media right now, which is the racism and the Black Lives Matter movement, which is big right now. Even Trump himself has said some pretty discriminatory things. And so by making Bond Hispanic, it's essentially displaying the idea that he's not the ideal Bond anymore, and that it can be anyone, yet he can still do the same things as we depict him to do.
Words here on this poster. So to start off, let's start with this knife. James Bond's holding a knife, as you can see here, which is a symbol of power, which is a common theme in James Bond, as a lot of James Bonds normally hold a gun or something, but this time we got the villains holding a gun, as in the police officers, and because a gun compared to a knife is obviously a lot more powerful, it resembles that they're dominating James Bond, as they have higher power, which is irregular to other James Bond movies, as normally Bond is overpowering other characters, and that's also relevant when you look at this. So the character that's most highest up is William, who is the antagonist. It's very unusual for him to be higher than James Bond in James Bond posters, with James Bond all the way at the bottom, showing that he's weak compared to William and Alexandria. And again, it's very weird for Alexandria to be higher than James, as normally in James Bond movies and posters, women are seen as just objects and very weak. So that's why it's very symbolic that she's there instead of lower than Bond. Their colours are also symbolic. As you can see, Alexandria and James are both wearing orange, which means they're allied or allies, while the police officers and William are both wearing blue, meaning they're also allied. And that just lets you know that as William is clearly the antagonist, as he's at the top, the police are also villains. It's also symbolic that you may not entirely be able to tell it by the poster, but Alexandria and James are both Hispanic and of a minority descent, compared to the antagonist being not a minority and being white, as well as the cops, which is very irregular for the Bond franchise, as normally minorities are bad guys, whites are good guys, so that's also symbolic, and that's very important to the themes, because we're going after the zeitgeist of 2020, and in 2020 we're all about protesting for racial rights, especially with what's going on right now, which is another reason why the cops are symbolic, as police brutality is something that's protested against quite a lot now, hence the reason that they're the villains in this poster. And white, blue, that's also symbolic. Also the colours red and black, blood, darkness, that's what they resemble. Refuse and Resist is the title, also in red and black. And another thing to point out is that Alexandria is not wearing objectifying clothing or just any clothing that reveals anything in general, and that's like very unusual for the Bond franchise, as women are normally objectified but aren't this time. And overall, we're just kind of going for the complete opposite of what a normal Bond movie would be. We're putting him in unusual situations, as Voodoo said. Prison bars in the background are also symbolic to the theme of the whole prison system. And yeah, that's the symbolic codes.
So, continuing off Patrick, in terms of technical codes, we purposely composed our poster in a particular way in order to show certain themes. The sizing and placement of each person will have symbolic meaning behind them, multiple of which our viewers will need to find out themselves. For example, the big bad takes up most of the upper part of the poster. This is symbolic for the character retaining a lot of power and control at his disposal, since his big size makes him seem more intimidating, or even his position at the top could represent him looking down at Bond. Furthermore, there could be a case made for Bond and the Hispanic woman beside him. Both character models are of significantly smaller size compared to the villain. This could represent them being at the bottom of this hierarchy, continuing our theme that minorities are not treated equally in society, and also since Bond is a minority in this film. And also the fact that Bond is represented as smaller than this woman can be interpreted as the woman being possibly better than him. This switches the gender roles we usually see in Bond films, since most of the time, Bond is the one in control and the woman is his sidekick. Continuing down to the bottom of the poster, we place our eyes on the title card, Refuse, Resist. This is relevant in today's society, as there have been a lot of protests lately, and the title is in reference to that. We got the term Refuse Resist from a song of a popular Hispanic band that follows the theme we mentioned before, that minorities do not have many rights. Thank you.